362 overtakes, 40 league changes, 15 different race leaders, and some super glue on a racing track. Welcome back to Motorsport 101.
But only one, bruh.
Mitch, bruh! Welcome back to episode 436 of Motorsport 101. I am your friendly neighborhood host, Dre Harrison, and I am currently living because Mitch Evans is back in the title race. You thought I'd yeed my last, bruh, and yet we still continue to take dubs up in here. I am living. We are going to chase down Pascal Wehrlein, and we're going to go win this title if we have to get through Nick Cassidy, because Nick Cassidy's going to be a serious friggin' problem. Anyway.
Yeah, I was about to say, like, hold on a second, partner. He's not even the greatest threat from New Zealand that Pascal Wehrlein has now.
Yeah. Oh, by the way, I'm your friendly neighborhood host, Dre Harrison, and welcome back to the Motorsport 101 podcast. And we're talking about Formula E in Berlin, in case you couldn't tell already, from that enthusiastic intro, to say the least. But with me, as we go around the horn this time round, first up, Mr. RJ O'Connell. Hello, sir.
I had an interesting weekend of enjoying Formula E because both times on every race morning, because it comes on at it came out at like 9 in the morning, both days, Saturday and Sunday, the race was. I wake up, and both days I realize, Formula E's on. I can go tune in on this. And hang on a minute, this is actually, a lot's happening here. Almost too much is happening.
Yeah, we weren't joking in the intro. There really was 362 overtakes across these two races in Formula E. 119 in race 1 and 172 in race 2. Race 1 broke records. We'll get into some of that in a minute. But it was genuinely hard to watch at times, only because it really did feel like we were watching a bumper car race. It was incredible, in the best and the worst, and mostly in the best sense, actually, to be honest with you. I can't say it was worse, because I actually really enjoyed it. We'll talk about that in a little bit as well. But also on the show, we have Cam Buckley. How's it going, Cam?
You know, it just feels like maybe Pascal Wehrlein should qualify the goddamn car for once.
Look, if Matthew Gunther can come from 21st to 6th in the race, he could come back from middle of the grid, right? That's sustainable, right?
Well, I mean, DaCosta was plus 14 when he got murked in the first race.
Yeah, had his mustache shaved off by Jake Dennis, who just lost control of his car completely. Again,
Kinshasa!
Oh, God.
Real ones know when that move was called the Beaumaye.
Oh, yeah.
Know when Shinsuke Nakamura was on the main event of WWE programming.
My tears, they flow. Yes, so we'll be talking all about Formula E in Berlin. We'll mention just how crazy the action was, the state of the championship race, because it looks very different compared to what it looked like before we got to Berlin, because obviously this was a doubleheader weekend, twice the prizes, double the fun. So that's crazy. The quality of the racing. We'll talk a little bit about some of the weird oddities of the race, because we've not even mentioned the fact that ABT Cupra had a front row lockout.
Whoa, what? Yo, I know I gotta be off some of that stuff that a certain former Speed Channel F1 pit reporter is on.
Oh, come on, man.
That was so out of pocket for you, RJ. What's wrong with you? That was uncalled for.
Although, fully correct. I mean, it did feel like a drug trip watching them.
Big Senator Armstrong, my sources, I made it up vibes.
Oh, yeah.
I guess they use nano machines in qualifying. But
who knew?
It's also quite telling that their qualifying on pole was over half of their points haul.
Yeah, more or less. But they did score some points in race 2. We'll get into some of that as well. And Envision beef. Kind of. Sort of. It was if you haven't seen the Nick Cassidy radio message from the morning's practice session on Sunday when they got to race 2, Go out of your way to find it. It is one of the most bizarre radio rants I think you will ever hear in your life. Like, no joke. We'll talk a little bit about that as well, because we had to joke about some of that too. It was wild. There was a lot of little things that went on in Berlin that was certainly worth talking about. And we got to talk about an environmental protest, because they're always fun, right?
This one didn't even have like orange powder involved.
No snooker tables were affected by the nature of this protest. I can confirm.
You know who had a snooker table that felt really involved in this, and I know we're dating ourselves because we're recording this as we're getting down to nut cutting time in the championships. Ronnie could have used a different table. Dude lost 7 frames in a row to throw away a tournament that he was odds on to win. That's why everybody loves this dude. He's just like, he'll look like he has absolutely no business of winning it, and he'll win the whole thing. He'll look like he has every business winning it, and he won't.
Yeah, that's that. I've said it in bookies in the time I was working in them full time for years. Never, ever, ever bet actual money on Ronnie O'Sullivan, because you just don't fucking know what you're gonna get ever. And this was another classic example. Who had Ronnie losing 7 on a spin to get knocked out by Luca Brachel? Fun times.
The once looking like one of the many failed prospects of the sport.
Yeah, weird time. As Jason says in our chat, he was the table. I like the reference. Very good. So we'll talk all about that and more over the next 45 minutes or so. But a quick roundup of where you can find us real quick. Motorsport101.com. I actually did do a race review for this very weekend. I don't normally tap into Formula E, but there was so much to talk about, I felt like it was worth writing about. So yeah, if you want to see an exclusive Dre's race review, for some added thoughts from yours truly on Berlin, check out the website if you haven't already. And all of that will be on there. Of course, all our social media is on there as well. Twitter, motorsport_101, our Instagram page, motorsport101pod. If you want to find our personal handles as us wonderful hosts, you can at Dre_WTF1, at RJ O'Connell, and at CBuckley917. And if you really like us, you can back us financially on Patreon, patreon.com/motorsport101. $5 gets you early access to all our episodes before they go live to the public. You can upgrade to the $10 level, where you can listen to these episodes live as they're being recorded. Like Jason is in our chat right now. Hi, Jason. Thanks for listening in, buddy. So with all that in mind, done and dusted, out of the way, let's talk some Tempelhof Nights, Formula E in Berlin.
Yeah, you won't get any of this shit in the new airport. That sanitized garbage, get out of here with that. Tempelhof is the only place where you have Formula E action like this. It's the most tenured track in serious history. We had 2 more awesome races in Berlin, and both of them went the way of cars powered by Jaguar I-Pace powertrains. In race 1, we had 190 overtakes, as we mentioned, as Mitch Evans wanted a 1-2 finish for Jaguar. Their first 1-2 finish as a Formula E factory team, immediately blowing anything that they achieved as a Formula 1 constructor out of the water. Yes, I realize where the bar sits.
The bar...
Subterranean. Mariana's Trench. Earth's mantle. How far deep do you want me to go?
It's lower than Toyota's return on investment for their F1 program.
Oof.
Matze Gunther finished in 3rd, and that was Maserati's first podium since taking over what was Venturi Racing. Their first single-seater podiums as a constructor since 1953? God, if King was here, he'd be telling us all about that shit. The golden ages. We had 9 different leaders. We had 23 lead changes, both Formula E single race records. And then we did it all again in race 2, where title contender Nick Cassidy decided to attack the front rather than sit behind, pulling off a triple overtake through a pack of traffic en route to taking the lead and staying at the front. 172 more overtakes later, he would win a narrow one over Jake Tennis, getting his first points in 5 races in 2nd, and Jean-Eric Verne in 3rd for DS Penske, 24 hours after getting knocked out of race 1 in what was a pretty crummy race 1 for DS Penske, but better in race 2. I will say. But
he got lotteried. It's a common occurrence. Please see your doctor if getting lotteried is right for you.
Whoa.
Well, I'd say it was not even the worst instance of a DS Penske car getting shoved out of the way this week. Did I read this right? Dan Ticktum actually led laps.
He did.
Dan
Ticktum got a hell of a start, went round the outside, and actually led several laps in race 1. And then the field decided, nah, fuck this for a laugh, and sent him back down the order again, which led him to an incident where he was side-by-side through turn 2 with Stoffel Van Dorn on his outside, and I've watched the footage back. Stoffel is alongside Ticktum for a good 5 seconds. Ticktum claims he never saw him, pushed Ticktum into the outside, pushed Van Dorn into the outside wall, wrecked both of their cars, and Ticktum got a 5-place grid penalty for race 2.
It happens sometimes, but
Probably
we're halfway through
happen.
this. Yeah. No. Dre, we're halfway through the season. This weekend, Porsche at their home race, as the big German manufacturers still with factory involvement in sport, they were expected to have a good weekend. They had a good, but not a great weekend. They only got 1 car on the podium out of 4 in 2 races. So 8 opportunities, only 1 podium, only 1 top 5 finish. Both of the wins came for Jaguar-powered cars. Jaguar had an awesome weekend. Trey, are the German brand in genuine trouble?
Well, they're still looking decent in the constructors' race. They're still leading that, but their gap has reduced. It's only 15 now, because Envision outpointed them by 26 off the back of the Berlin weekend, and Jaguar was coming up quick behind them because they took 55 points out of Berlin compared to Envision's 50 and Porsche's 24. That's some quick math there for you folks. But on a driver's standpoint as well, the last 5 races, and I used the last 5 races because that was after we got through the night rounds in the Diriyah double. Me and Cam, we sat down, we put arms around each other, and we thrashed out that, hey, maybe things will change once we get out of the night racing, and things have changed to a degree. There's no getting around it. In the last 5 rounds since Hyderabad, Nick Cassidy has outscored Pascal Wehrlein 86-32. This is not sustainable for Pascal Wehrlein,
and it's not even so. It's not so much on the Porsche car side of things because in race trend, they're still excellent. I mean, one of those races was a DaCosta win. DaCosta was going to be hunting for a podium in race 1 until, well, a wild Jake Dennis appeared backwards into his front wing.
Didn't help.
Hume right into him. But Pascal really needs to do a better job in qualifying. And both he and DaCosta, the factory Porsches, have been consistently very poor in qualifying and consistently incredible in race trim. And it's clear that the Porsche can qualify because Jake Dennis has been qualifying it just fine. But he hasn't scored in multiple races.
Yeah, that second place he got in race 2 was his first points of any kind for 5 rounds.
Talk about unsustainable. I mean, he was leading the championship. He was second by a mile.
Yeah, they
behind Pascal only 2 races ago.
Yeah, the thing is though is that after the first 3 rounds, Wehrlein and Dennis had 50 points on the field because everybody else was tripping over each other, and now since then, Cassidy's been the informed man on the whole series. Jev's put together some really strong results. Dennis has sunk down the order because he just could not get any points going.
He couldn't finish a race for about a month.
Evans went back-to-back in Sao Paulo and then in Berlin. Even DaCosta and Bird have had some decent results scattered amongst a couple of donuts here and there, to the point where the top 6 are now covered by 32 points. We've actually got a title fight again here, folks.
Oh, yeah!
And again, it's not going to matter how good the Porsche is in race trim if they keep giving themselves so much to do when the actual race comes around.
We know Pascal Wehrlein can pass some freaking cars now.
That's the opposite problem. He used to be able to qualify, but he couldn't pass any cars. Now he can pass all of the cars, but he hasn't been able to qualify.
And when you're coming from that far back, you're stretching the capabilities of Porsche's powertrain. We all know it's still an excellent powertrain. And
yeah, their energy usage is still, at worst, joint best in the field.
But when you're coming back from 16th, you need to use the extra energy to get past people.
Exactly.
And you can't be as effective with your usage if you're having to burn your excess trying to pass cars. And, I think he was a little conservative in race 2, but Verline led in race 2 at certain points. He had opportunities, but I think maybe Verline's being a bit conservative again. I don't know whether he's starting to think about the title fight a little bit more, and maybe that's led to him making some business decisions. Because if you remember race 1, Stoffel Van Dorn did exactly that off the start. You might remember seeing that way that we were looking at 4 wide into turn 1, and then Van Dorn was like, "Nope, I'm not having this. let me back out of it." But
and Jason asks in the chat is how much is related to temperature. I don't think Porsche's lost anything from temperature. And again, we know the car can qualify because Jake Dennis has been able to qualify it. Andre Lauderer can't qualify or race worth a damn in this series at this point, but
cooked.
The other two, all 3 of the others have had wins, and emphatic wins at that.
Yeah.
It's Jaguar has gotten stronger relatively, but the difference is that Evans and Bird have generally been doing their jobs in qualifying.
Yeah, and they've just generally been more consistent, and they're punching up with higher results. Verline's not touched a podium since we had the night races and the first 3 rounds of the year, so it's not ideal. I mean,
at the going rate, who do you think wins the championship now? This is not like an official, let's change our preseason pick sort of thing.
Oh, no, we actually should, given that DS Powertrain's catfish.
I would love to and just pretend that season preview never happened, but it was a very good show, and I can't do Sasha dirty like that. But right now, Cassidy's the hot hand. Cassidy's been on fire since the night races, and
second in Hyderabad, third in Cape Town, second in Sao Paulo, fifth, and the win in Berlin. He's only getting better.
Yeah, Nick Cassidy is starting to show the potential that RJ alluded to when he first got to this series. It's starting to come together for Cassidy now, and
everything he has stepped into, he has won it pretty much.
Yeah, and you look at that with Cassidy's odds. We didn't even mention this. Pascal Verline's last 5 qualifying sessions: 9th, 6th, 15th, 15th, and 6th. He's not gotten into the second round of a duel since the night races. It's a problem. It is a problem. And like I said, Da Costa's been sloppy on occasions too. Not all of it has been on Da Costa's fault, but you still got moments like Sao Paulo. That was a race I think Da Costa could have won and missed out. And ended up going wide, having to stop on track because of that rule regarding the opening chicane, and then settled for a midfield spot.
Big points on the table in these last 5 races.
Yeah, they have. And Cassidy is just collecting points. He's just shoveling them at the moment. Every single round, he's just upping the pressure, and now he's only 4 points behind Verline for the championship lead. Jeff is right there. Jeff is still here.
Yeah, hold on a second. Before we pump the brakes on DS Powertrain's catfishing us, there is one guy who is still third in the championship with one of those things.
Did any of us pick Jeff? I don't think we did.
I don't think we did. Jason's listening in. I'm sure he'll pull up the table in a minute. The convenience of Jason being here is very useful.
Yeah, I know for a fact we didn't.
I'm pretty sure I didn't.
I'm looking at the table right now. We did not.
No, so there you go.
I just thought Stoffel Van Dorn was going to be consistent and carry this forward and not get pinched into the wall by Dan Ticktum.
I thought Maserati wasn't going to suck ass.
No, but they got their first podium this weekend, so good for them.
Maxi Gunther, the championship is still on.
We could still win this. Maxi Gunther, I'm assuming it came back from injury, right? That's the reason why we haven't seen him all year, right?
Right, yeah. Oh, God. Somebody pull out a rescue beacon or... Oh, apparently I did pick Jeff. Huh. According to Jason.
God, you smut mother...
There's still hope. There's still some hope here. Give me 50 cc's of copium, stat. But yeah, I mean, that was the first Maserati podium, and Max Gunther stole Sebastien Buemi's lunch money going over the line, which I think actually started. I think that was the moment that started some of the Cassidy beef. I'll talk about that in a little bit later on as well, because I think that was very intriguing how we got to that point. But yeah, Mitch Bra happened, Nick Cassidy happened, New Zealand is on the march. It's looking like a championship fight again, and yeah, Pascal needs to step it up and quick, otherwise he's going to get bottled up because the chasing pack is coming quickly. It is going to be an issue because, like, at the moment, like, the next 7 dudes behind him in the championship have all had highlight reel moments, which makes you think if they can get on a run, they might be able to close him in. Even Buemi, like, probably should have won race 1. It was right in the mix for race 1, and he was not happy about having to settle for finishing off the podium in the end.
Well, then that begs the question: which one is one of them going to go on a run, or are they all going to be beating the shit out of each other to the point where they're all taking points off of one another, including Pascal?
I want all-out war Monaco.
Yeah, which is next. Oh, baby. That's going to be fun.
The real Monaco Grand Prix is next.
Oh, yeah. That's going to be fun. 100%. So we got to talk about some of the racing in general, because, gentlemen, we watched both of these races, and my word, this was intense.
It was just a pair of, like, public lobby Gran Turismo 5 karting runs where it's just total mayhem. So many overtakes, so much wheel-to-wheel action. Attack modes. People on attack modes, passing people down the straights. This track just produces all kinds of wheel-to-wheel action with these cars.
Right. This was so good. And, like, you had the variance of cars choosing where and when they wanted to regen. I mean, some of the records that got broken. Most Formula E overtakes in a single race. That was race 1 in Berlin. There was 190 overtakes. There was 9 different race leaders, which had never happened in Formula E history. So nearly half the field led at least a lap. And there was also 23 lead changes in general in a 43-lap race.
Normal.
Which is incredible. I mean, that means there was a lead change more than one every 2 laps. That's incredible on average. That is ridiculous. Regens, deep passes. I mean, Berlin, it's the longest tenured track left on the Formula E calendar for good reason. It produces consistently great racing. And we talked about it. In Tempelhof Nights and our special on YouTube and other Formula E shows, because Berlin is such a blank canvas. It's so good and suits what the series is trying to do with its racecraft, and it works. And it's been the general. I mean, I said it in my race review on the website, and I'll say it again here. Of all the series we cover on this show, and it's 4th all time, we dabble in a bunch of others part time now as well. I don't think any of the other big 3 we cover, or members of the big 4, I should say, really, is producing racing as good as this at the moment. Since Hyderabad, Formula E has been on fire.
Not consistently. I mean, IndyCar's had flashes, but it's also had some wretched racing. F1,
no.
No, just no, generally. I mean,
Mid.
Great racing, unless you like racing for the lead, in which there is nothing here for you.
Pretty much.
And MotoGP has more or less devolved into the worst of what Formula One had to offer in terms of, bike-to-bike racing in 21 and 22. Or 21 and 20.
MotoGP is in a weird place where its sprint format has now probably exposed all the issues of its series, and now the sprints are better than the Grand Prix. That's a weird place to be in right now. Is that fair to say? The sprints have been better than the GPs?
I don't think you're wrong. That is something that I think we need to cover in more detail at some point.
Oh, definitely more. I think we got Jerez this weekend, so we'll definitely address it then.
We got Baku next weekend.
Oh yeah.
No.
But But I was gonna come here and just chime in. It's just artificial lift and coast Peloton racing where the overtakes
out of
don't
his mouth
matter.
If he does not back out of that microphone right now.
Sorry, is this better? I have to use my stage voice here to just like express my contempt for like, you know, it's the other guy that used to be on Top Gear leading the charge that like all these
Chris Evans
and Tiffany Dell, but it's just like, look, man, this is part of the terms of engagement of Formula E. I don't know what to tell you. Sure, everyone would love it if these dudes could push from lights to flag and overtake that way rather than the overtakes coming as a result of people lifting and coasting 50 meters early, 100 meters earlier. But that's a skill unto itself. And while a lot of these passes were very, very easy, I can't say I dislike it more than your average.
Can I just step in here for a moment? Because, look, what I will say is that FE did have the problem of being over artificial. It did, with its qualifying format that was much talked about on this show. Just sowing chaos by design. And with the fan boost that mattered, but didn't really matter, but it still left a bad taste in everyone's mouth. How is managing hybrid, or sorry, in this case, they are not hybrids. How is managing electricity any different from managing your hybrid system in an LMP1?
Pretty much.
Or managing your brakes in an endurance race, or trying to not blow your engine up by over-spooling your turbo.
I can't say
setting it to qualifying mode, or indeed just any car management at all. Car management is part of racing. Alain Prost made a career out of it.
And we hated him for that shit.
And we hated him for it.
I can't say I dislike what I saw more than, you know, your average NASCAR super speedway pack race, something that I grew up on and loved when I was younger. And now whenever I watch a race at Daytona or Talladega or now Atlanta, I just feel like it invites the worst impulses of drivers to come out and cause a multi-car pileup on the regular at any given moment. I am in my feelings about Ryan Blaney and Bubba Wallace taking one another out at the end of Talladega.
I love me some Bubba Wallace, but when's he going to learn?
I can't say I dislike this more than the DRS-assisted overtakes in an F1 race. RJ, you're the guy that evangelizes for a series that gives weight handicaps to teams for punish them for winning. Okay, maybe I just like a little bit of sports entertainment in my motorsport. I don't know what to tell you.
Well, it's their car management and indeed energy management, we watch everyone in every series be put in a position where, you know what? You got to make a fuel number. I know you want to push right now. You got to make a fuel number. It's part of motorsport. How you win don't matter. It's that you won.
And what I would say in response to all that is that, yeah, management is a critical part of motorsport. It always has been from the very start.
In every discipline.
It's just people like the psychological notion of going all out or going flat out because it makes people feel better about what they're watching. It's a placebo effect. I've said this for many, many years. Like, Formula E is exactly what Formula E was aiming for, and it's proving successful. This is working. Gen 3 has generally, for on-track action, been excellent so far. Just like the end of Gen 2 was.
Full disclosure, I mean, as you guys know, obviously, we debated continuing covering this series on this podcast.
We did.
Because Gen 2 in its last couple of years was just leaving a bad taste in our mouths.
Yeah, we didn't enjoy it.
Yeah, it wasn't fulfilling to watch. Gen 3 has put on as good a racing product as any other series in this world right now in the year 2023. The cars can race. The cars pass the eye test when they're racing wheel to wheel. They're fast. We're actually to the point where a lot of tracks are now the limiting factor because the series and how it's structured and the cars are no longer the limit.
We're going to need to build a bigger Tempelhof Airport street circuit.
And that's another thing about this track. This track has worked brilliantly across multiple generations of car.
Agreed.
And that's the testament to a great track, regardless of the series.
It's amazing what just using a disused airfield runway could do. You know, I heard there was an IndyCar race at a disused airfield one time. But they would never come back to it. And they're about to tear down that airport in Cleveland.
Yeah, look, the racing is excellent. The racing has been excellent. I said it again. I think it's the best racing series of the major players in the world right now. I really genuinely do think that. And on a side note, I'm kind of glad, low key, that the fast charging that was meant to be coming in for this season is not coming in, because, and look, for me, the regen is what makes this series so intriguing and interesting, not the outright speed. Like, the key part of Formula E's racing is energy conservation and usage. Managing that, knowing when to push, knowing when to save your battery, and not when Formula E descends into sprint race fuckery. So the fact that the series was thinking about going down this whole route of fast charging and bringing back mandatory pit stops, I thought was bull jive, because it was going to turn races into sprints again, and it shouldn't be about that. Like, it should be about the regen and energy management, because that's what makes races so fun. Look at Nick Cassidy's title campaign. How many times was he caught out in second place, unable to challenge for the win, despite being on more energy than the people in front of him? It happened
And I've watched enough of Nick Cassidy in more traditional categories to know that those skills of being able to push flat out are not something that he has forgotten.
No. And I loved the fact that in race 2, he didn't just settle for second like he's done on a couple of times before and tried to save his energy. No, he attacked past 5 cars in the space of 2 laps, got to the front, bullied Jake Dennis into burning his battery instead, and ended up winning. Because that means Cassidy's learned something. He's not just stuck behind and tried to wait until the last lap for his opportunity. He's actually taken the race by the scruff of the neck, and it won him the race. It was brilliant.
We've seen it a few times this year, where it was something that Porsche did early on, where they would just go and make everyone else use more energy.
Yeah. Cassidy did something different.
Quick enough pace where they can use their regen, they can use their conservation, and not have to burn as much energy to get the same pace. At the end of the day, no matter how you beat someone, what matters is that you're beating them.
Exactly. And like I said, Cassidy in that regard has learned. He's adapted, and he's been brilliant for that very reason. And part of that is because of the quality of racing. So look, Formula E, if you're out there listening, because I know you do, because I know you're very protective about the quality of your series and what people say about it, listen to me and listen good. Can the fast charging. You don't need it. Your racing product is perfectly fine just the way it is. I promise you, let your regen do the talking. That's the sell. That's what will end up in Jaguar's road cars, and which you can get right now if you go into your Jaguar dealership. Don't go down the sprint road. Don't. You don't have to follow every other major fucking series at the moment.
The problem around that is that the fast charging is something requested by the manufacturers.
They're silly. Don't listen to them.
They're silly, but the quote-unquote relevance, big air quotes on that one, is the whole reason why they're here, along with some casual greenwashing.
Yeah.
More on that later.
We'll get to that in a bit. But yeah, like, manufacturers of Formula E, don't go down the fast charging road. You're not impressing anybody with that. Like, use your regen. That's why you're here. That's the good shit, and that's what makes good racing.
362 overtakes. I don't care how you get them. That shit was still fire.
Oh, it was fantastic. Great pair of races all weekend long. And speaking of shit that happened over the weekend, because we've got to talk about some oddities here. How about ABT Cupra? 1-2 to start that second race with Robin Freins on pole.
You know, once upon a time, the ABT Formula E team having a front row lockout wouldn't have seemed so far-fetched. But things changed. Things changed in a hurry. The team died after Audi pulled out of the sport. They were revived in their first race back as a full-fledged team. They were slow, and Robin Freins had a wrist injury so bad that we thought he was going to miss the rest of the season. Fast forward to Cape Town, Kelvin van der Linde is about to race in front of his home crowd, but the car's not safe to drive, and he and Nico Muller pulled out. And out of all of this, they have scored their first points in one day.
5 points, 3 for the pole position, and then 9th for Muller in race 2, got him 2 more. They're still bottom of the Constructors' Championship for what it's worth, but
they're on the board.
They are on the board, and I think that for them means more than any Constructors' place, given where they were at the start of the season. I distinctively remember in that season preview where Robin Freins was talking about just finishing races would be considered an achievement for this team when they started out of the year, and now they've got 5 points. Good for them.
I was silently, just like in my mind, just chanting Nico, hold, you beautiful man.
Hold it, you son of a bitch. And yeah, God, they locked up. I've never seen so many hugs given out in that garage, and I love the fact they had Alan McNish on commentary for this weekend rather than Dario, who I think was in America. They had Alan McNish, the former Audi Sport team boss there, and he said, "Nah, we never had a 1-2 when I was running that team."
With full Audi backing, no less.
With full Audi backing, they never locked out a front row in all their years they were running the team in Formula E.
How did the ABT Cupra cars get so good in the rain? Like, I know that these are not completely spec cars, but what's their secret to it?
Well, it's the first time we've really seen these cars run in the rain, and sometimes cars are just better when you add water.
Yeah, and it becomes a lot more driver dependent, and we all know Robin Frins can wheel a car. I mean, that boy knows wheel. And yeah, as Cam quite rightly said, we've not run the Gen 3 cars in the wet at all since its inception. This is it was the first wet run-in anybody had done. In this generation of car. So you never knew what we were going to get. And yeah, that's what led to another topsy-turvy qualifying session. And yeah, both apps locking out the front row and Robin Freins on pole. So hey, if you want ABT Cupra to be competitive, just add water. So that's fun. And yeah, congratulations to them. That is a hell of a result for them. And you could see how much it meant to the guys in the back and how hard they've had to work. And days like that make it all worthwhile.
Maybe one of these days, Neo 333 will be able to capitalize on their raw one-lap pace and convert that into a race result that's actually worth the darn.
They've had a couple of decent ones.
Yeah, they've had some good results. I'm just thinking, there is potential. I never thought it'd be.
I think both Sete Camera and Tictum have both hit the top 6 so far this year. So, Tictum, I know, definitely has.
Yeah.
They've had flashes, but
yeah. It's not been dreadful for Neo this year.
No, it's not been dreadful. I just keep thinking, there's more to be unlocked here.
Yeah, Sete Camera was 5th. He was 5th in Hyderabad.
Yeah, I mean, as we said earlier, Tictum was leading the race that he ended up, crashing out of with Van Dorn. They have had flashes of pace. It's just their energy consumption is less than great in race trend, let's say.
100%. Yeah,
so much better.
Good for Mazda. They got their first podium with Maxi Gunther, as RJ alluded to as well. Gunther went plus 16 in race 2, going from the back of the grid to 6th. Also plus 50, I should say. Sorry, my maths is a bit out there. Plus 15 on race 2. It was like we were watching this race in race 2. And then about halfway through, though, I suddenly realized, wait, what the fuck is Max Gunther doing in 6th?
Surprise!
I'm like, what the hell? That was funny. Dan Tictum leading a race is always funny, for ironic reasons more than anything else. And did you guys see the beef between Cassidy and Buemi?
I heard about this, but I didn't actually pick up on what was actually said, but I heard it was strange.
Yeah, I think it goes back a little bit to the Saturday race 1, where how they've now done this driver's room bullshit after a race finishes, where you get 5 of them in a room and they play the highlights and they talk about it. Both Envisions were in that room because Buemi had just been nabbed for a podium by Max Gunther over the line. And Cassidy looked at Buemi dead in the eye and said, "What happened? I thought you had the win in the bag." Buemi was like, no. He just shook his head and he basically said to Cassidy, "Don't talk to me." He was pissed.
And Sebastien Buemi, of course, he is a spectacular driver, but he is also moody as all hell. I've actually got the transcript in front of him. What is he doing, man? Seriously, the guy since yesterday, he's been on drugs. The guy in front of me in the debrief will go, "Oh, yes, Stoffel, I would be P1, but I got traffic if my mom was a man, blah, blah, blah."
I would love to have seen what had gone on that post-race Saturday debrief for Cassidy to come out with that on a hot mic during FP2. Like, what was that? I know their engineer had to very quickly squash it, and I know their team boss Felipe was like, they're just racing hard, they're competing for a championship. These things happen, emotions blow over and all of that jazz, and they had to squash it. And to be fair, they seem to have gotten along a bit better about it, like after Sunday's race. But it was very funny. Watching them struggle like that and seeing the beef between
struggling with success.
It's funny. When we became a dad again this week, and he was still grumpy as all hell.
Dre, as a longtime sports car viewer, anytime you go on board with in this case, the number 8 Toyota, and you see the radio on and it's Buemi, you just need to prepare.
Really? Is it that bad?
It's been an ongoing thing for about a decade.
He's just a grumpy boy.
He's a grumpy boy. He turns 35 years. Christ, that makes me feel old.
He's 35 this year? Oh my God.
The passage of time is an absolute.
I was literally helping to write a video on WTF1 ranking the Red Bull I use the term rejects loosely because it's a harsh term, but you got to get those.
The non-graduates.
The non-graduates, and like talking about Buemi and obviously the fact he's won Le Mans 4 times and all of that, and realizing, holy shit, Sebastien Buemi is like in his mid-30s now, and I remember him in F1 like it was yesterday. Like, shit is wild. Time is a flat circle.
Him and Lucas deGrassi and Sam Bird have been here since the very beginning of this championship, which is going on 10 years.
Right.
That's strange.
It is wild. It's hard to think that next year will be the 10th anniversary of Formula E as a series.
Next year will be the 10th anniversary of Nico Prost and Dick Heidfeld having an airplane crash so that Lucas deGrassi, the day one believer in this championship, could go on to win in a square track in Beijing after a 20-minute formation lap. What a time to be alive. Speaking of weird times to be alive, we had a climate change protest group, Germany's Last Generation. This was not Just Stop Oil, but this is a German group. Members of that group climbed up the fence, got on the track. One of them glued themselves to the medical car before the start of race 2. They were then escorted off the premises. And then after some cleanup, we started the race. Dre, you got thoughts about this?
Yeah, because people were in my mentions about this a lot because everybody just assumed it was another Just Stop Oil protest. Like, they've gotten quite famous in the UK for these sorts of protests. They literally, as we joked about, it hit the World Snooker Championship last week by pouring some powder over a table before being removed by security.
A table that was at the end of its life cycle anyway.
Yeah, it was getting reclouged the same night. So yeah, well done, fellas. Well played. But a lot of people got in my mentions on both sides of the aisle on this one. And look, I said it on Twitter at the time, and I stand by it. It's very much like the famous Chris Rock Kill the Messenger speech in his stand-up routine from years ago where he talks about O.J. Simpson, and he goes, I'm not saying he should have killed her, but I understand. And this is no way a justification of what O.J. Simpson did, of course not, but we're
going to get some emails.
Oh yeah, no question, but I understand why this happened. I get it. I genuinely do, and I know a lot of people are going to disagree with me on this, and I'm going to accept that because, look, motorsport is dangerous enough as it is. Of course, it is. We all know that. I said it on our written piece on the website. Most of us have probably witnessed at least one live fatality in our lives, unfortunately, in the series that we watch. Me, it's several. And I know that's not just me in this room as we record this. Anything that risks other people's lives and other people's trauma needs to be very much weighed up. And I completely get that argument that you should, running onto a live track is extremely dangerous. Of course it is. You don't need me to tell you. You don't need to tell me that. Like, that's completely understanding, a completely valid take. However, I do have a degree of empathy for these protesters. And the reason I say it, and I've never been that upset by most of Just Stop Oil's protests either, for what it's worth. There's some controversy with them because they were funded by an oil baroness. There's some jokes about that.
Almost like a
double bluff.
The perspective of they are formed as a psyop to make genuine activists for climate justice look terrible.
Yeah, it's like a double bluff in a sense, where it's like, get people angry, turn them off the cause. It's very sus. And I know there's many genuine climate activists out there that would never even consider something like this. And that's part of the problem here. Climate change is one of the most generational issues we as a human race are going to go through over the next 50 years. We are already at the point of no return when it comes to climate change. We are now talking about permanent damage to the way we live over the next 50 to 100 years. Our children are going to have to deal with a problem they might not be able to fix. And Formula E is just as guilty as many other motorsport series about greenwashing, and they claim they're net zero. They're not really. Like, come on. They still ship a bunch of their gear. They're still manufacturing parts that aren't carbon zero. We okay, maybe the series itself is, but the other avenues on the way in most certainly are not.
Multiple manufacturers joining FE basically to cover up the fact that they were caught in emission scandals.
Yeah.
And not just the obvious one, of course.
Of course. This is an industry-wide issue. And yeah, Formula E and I know people like DaCosta were coming out saying, oh, this is like the worst series you could have done this with. And I'm like, well, maybe on the face of it, but Formula E is not absolved of accountability in any of this, right?
Is there any good series that you could do this to?
No, I mean, there's less bad series that you could do this for.
But we did that when the Extinction Rebellion hit up Silverstone, and we hated when they did that too. And if anything, it could have been an even bigger disaster if it wasn't for the fact that Zhou Guanyu ended up upside down and in a catch fence. Look, the point I'm getting at here is that a lot of people will say, oh, the anger and the upset that it causes will put people off the course. Again, there's some validity to that, and I'm not going to dispute that. However, if you're a climate activist right now, how are you meant to do this? How are you meant to make a point? How are you meant to send a message and make an impact without causing some sort of major disruption? Because I am all ears. The
whole point of a protest is to be disruptive,
right?
That it is by nature. Otherwise, it's not an effective protest.
And if human nature has taught us, and human history has taught us anything over the last 200 years, it's that the most effective protests are the ones that cause the most disruption.
No one has caused great change by being quiet.
And look, the people that are saying this is not the way to do it, sure, there's some genuine claims to that. What's the alternative? Because for all the people that were in my mentions on Twitter telling me that this is unacceptable, and yeah, I can see why you feel that way. The one question I've always asked in response, and I've never gotten a valid answer in response to this back, is, well, what do you do instead? Because these guys have targeted politicians thrown cream pies in their faces, thrown animal fur or thrown like blood on them for things like animal protests in the past.
What constitutes a quote-unquote acceptable protest?
Right.
One that is comfortable and placating. And we just went through like a whole row of that 3 years ago in the United States and elsewhere in the world. Like, I think
still ongoing, let's be honest.
I think if you were to reframe this as like, you know, they're here to protest the fact that this electric racing championship round is sponsored by a petrochemical company
from Saudi Arabia.
I'm well aware that there are lubricants inside of these cars still, but come on. It's a subsidiary of Aramco.
Yeah. It's greenwashing. Call it what it is. So yeah, they have every right to go protest. And like I said, like I've said to people for years, people have targeted politicians. It has not worked. People have tried conventional peaceful protests, making big visual statements, right? And no one cares. Society in general does not give a shit about climate change.
They just force their head further in the sand.
Right. So what are these guys meant to do? Like, what's the alternative? Like, how do you get people behind the cause without potentially pissing people off? Because, like I said, and I know many climate activists have said the same thing themselves. Like, if there's a better idea, I'd love to hear it, because I don't hear any suggestions being filled out in the box. And as RJ quite rightly alluded to, like, you're talking to a black guy here. Many people with the same skin color as me were more than prepared to pay the ultimate price for what they believed in. So at what point do you go, let bygones be bygones? At what point do you say, fuck it, let them go? Like, because honestly, like saying that invading a motorsport track is too far, yeah, like I said, I get that argument, but if this isn't the way to do it, then what is? Anyone?
I don't have that answer.
I don't have it either. And we're in a spot where like there's a lot of stuff that is worth going out there and causing mass disruption over great injustice in the world. I mean, it's easy for us to say, you know, we're in positions where we can't really go out there and sacrifice our lives and our livelihood to do it. But other people can. Other people are prepared to do that. It's just something we got to deal with.
There's no getting around it. And this is not going to stop. And if anything, it's going to only further embolden them to do this again. And you know what? I accept that. And yeah, there'll be some risk. Hopefully, there'll be no true tragedies that come as a direct result of this. But as many climate activists have also pointed out, compared to the millions of lives we may lose through climate change directly and indirectly over the next generation or two, you know, maybe it's worth it. And that's why I don't think there's an easy answer to just saying, oh, well, look at these guys, you know, they've thrown some powder on my snooker table, or, you know, they caused 3 minutes of disruption to a Formula E race. Because the security was always going to solve it and get it over with and get it done with in the end. I mean, Scott Elkins as race director isn't an idiot. He knows what he's doing, right? So, you know, I just find it annoying that people are so quick to dismiss what's going on when we are talking about one of the generational issues of our times, and a series that is nowhere near as innocent as people like to think that it is in all of this. It's a series that is every bit as complicit as many of the others we often dogpile for other societal issues that we talk about with this series. Is that fair to say?
No, that's entirely fair. And somehow I hear birds chirping in the background. I think that is a wonderful note to end it on.
I agree. Formula E is back in a week and a half's time at Monaco. Oh, yes.
The best Monaco Grand Prix. The real Monaco Grand Prix.
The former Formula E Race of the Year on Motorsport 101's awards from a couple of years back. Monaco, we know, can produce quality racing. It has, and there's a good chance it will again. I'm really looking forward to that. Also, stay tuned. We got 3 more episodes coming for you next week because it's a busy weekend. We got Formula 1 in Baku with the new revamped sprint. Don't all look so excited at once. I mean, yay. We got 2 qualifying sessions now. Woohoo!
What's better than 1 qualifying session? 2 of them. But at least we could definitively answer who won the pole position for the Grand Prix.
Let's go. So that'll be fun. So look forward to that. Yeah, we've got MotoGP at Jerez this weekend. Breaking news as of today: no Marc Marquez for that Spanish Grand Prix. His thumb still hasn't fully recovered yet. He's aiming to be back for Le Mans in 2 weeks' time. That's a bit of a bummer, but yeah, continue best wishes to Mark. But it looks like Enea Bastianini will be back this weekend for Ducati, so look forward to seeing him.
How about Iker Lecuona getting another chance in MotoGP?
Much deserved. He got a raw fucking deal when he was at KTM, and I'm delighted he'll be back.
A young rider getting the raw deal at KTM.
No, never
would have thought.
Never happens. But yeah, that'll be coming up at Jerez. And we got IndyCar this weekend for the Grand Prix of Barber. One of the better IndyCar rounds on the calendar. Looking forward to that one as well. So
consistently underrated. It's a shame that the people who run the state that it's in are the way that they are. I am a former resident, and I can say this.
Yes, couldn't agree more. But
I'm not a former resident, and I'm still going to say it.
Oh, 100%. I'm right with you on that one. Fuck that. But should produce some great racing. So we'll have all of that next week on Motorsport 101 to look forward to. But we'll call it a wrap on this one. I've been Dre Harrison. They've been RJ O'Connell and Cam Buckley. Until next time, thank you very much for listening. Sayonara.
Later, y'all.
I just don't want to see a Porsche in the wall of turn 1 in Monaco again.
You just got ticked-umed.
Oh.